Welcome to Digital Creativity with Chrome Illusion. We got a special guest today, Phil Steiger of Dog Waffle. Cool little program. It was a digital painting program made at the time, back in the day, made to appeal to lightwave artists, but it's become far more than that for the digital community. So, Phil, you want to say hello to everybody?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, they can hear you perfectly fine, coming through loud and clear.
Okay.
So,
Thanks for
I,
having me.
so Phil, I'm going to let you take it away. Welcome everybody, Phil Steiger of Dog Waffle.
All right, thank you very much. Hello, and hello to everybody. Indeed, as Steve indicated, this started long ago with actually some plugins. The guy who makes this, Dan Ritchie at squirreldome.com, he's also a lightweight user. And he had started to create plugins or add-ons. He still makes some occasionally. And some of these also, like a light engine, some other special effects tools were initially perhaps plugins to Lightwave, or at the same time also he said, I need to create some kind of thing program that brings back some of the how-tos and some of the features that he was so familiar with, liked so much, coming from a different paint program, E-Paint, Deluxe Paint. And that was on the Amiga. So long ago, that uh, gave him the motivation to create something that would allow him to do a few things in a similar way. But then, of course, it gradually got its own flair or its own set of capabilities as well. So it's evolved a bit. It's not just a paint program anymore. It also has, of course, a lot of particle brushes, still painting in that sense. And we'll take a look at some of these. It's great for foliage effects. In fact, there's a whole category of foliage brushes that will draw a whole tree or a bush or something like that with one brush. It will also do self-shading or active shading. So you can see that used for a variety of nature painting projects, but then also on a variety of types of activities. And it's not all about particle brushes. There are a lot of other types of brushes. In fact, this version 11.4, coming out really soon, we're about to release that, has a couple of shortcuts to get to the same collections of different brushes. And let's say if you look at the watercolors, that's not much of it. You'll have perhaps some watercolors that will do a bit of pixel blending or pigment fusion. So it could be used for something. I'm not exactly the expert at painting and drawing, so I'll do some stick figures and stuff like that. But beyond that, I'll show you certainly where it's not going just a paint program, but also an animation program. And a tool to create 3D landscapes, and, elements that you might use in some other projects where you put them all together. So, at the onset, it's a paint program. You'll see a tool on the left side here, the toolbar, that can be customized to column or one column as well. I like this layout on the side on the left, and on the right side, there's another one called the sidebar. And in that sidebar, you have some extra controls, features. One in particular at the top here gives you some previews of media, but full media based brush image. There's also paper, and you can enable that. You can also enable what we call blending with another image. There's two images. You know when you erase this. So we have a starting image, and this image is where you might want to paint the thing with brushes, that sort of thing. And then you'll think, well, when you paint in real, like on a canvas, on paper, or on in real media, traditional, you have also the backside of it, and we call that the swap buffer. So there's the main image buffer, there's a swap buffer that you can switch to. Up here, switch to that. There's also some tools under the image menu to operate and work with the swap. So you can jump to the swap image. In fact, there's a keyboard shortcut to do that. It's able to jump. And that's something you see, that is actually something that you saw on the website. You'll see it in a few other programs. I think there's something similar in 3 Program Vendor. There is also something similar in some other paint program from a German developer, Escapes. But it's a concept of basically having a main image and this alternate image. And that alternate image could be used for a variety of things. Now sometimes it's somewhat similar to the layer. Right? Don't get me wrong, you have layers. We don't do quite layers the same as Photoshop, so it's not exactly focused on that. But there are a lot of things you do with the swap image. And to give you an idea, an example here, if I go and render something, perhaps some pattern, say a grid pattern, like let me do that over a plain image, something like that. Grid into that, something like this. Then I switch over to the swap image. Let's see up here that I'm looking at the swap buffer right now. I'm going to render something else in here. Let's say render the plasma noise. And keep that. So this pattern, this noise pattern, can be used as a way to influence this image. Right? I have 2 images now. I have the main image here, and I have a swap image here. And what I'd like to do is see how can I combine that or influence one with the other, and I'm filtering this in some of the ways. One of them is simply combining them, mixing or blending. We're either looking at one or the other, or somewhere in between. And in fact, there's something you have also where you can apply a change on here. Say if you paint with some brush, let's take an oily brush with oils, paint something like this, and you like the displacement it did, you like some of it, but it's too intense. You like to kind of blend a little bit what it was before back into that. So one thing you can do is simply do what we call drag. That's basically you have an image before and an image after the post-laser effect, and this translation goes. Now, again, as far as like what else can you do with the swap image, one of them is simply combining it in a number of ways. Maybe doing a difference analysis, or subtract. Displace is another one. Displacing it by the image underneath it. That's a tool that you will certainly use to create model textures, but also displacing is simply turbulent effects, like animated turbulence, air rising in a hot summer day, and you see the data move and change over time as displacement is happening. So this is a great way to use a swap image, either as a static or it could be an animated swap image. So for instance, one of the displacements I would use quite a bit is the cool displacement, where you can density and do all sorts of stuff like that. Now a single image like this may not be the best way to see that. Let's apply something else. Let's actually go and do the exact same plasma noise, which is random every time it's a little bit different. And I'm going to go have this one displaced by that one. So, there is a question. Somebody asked, what software is this? So this is Project Dog Waffle. There are 2 different flavors of it. This one is the Howler edition. PD Howler is a paint program for the PC, runs on Windows. You'll be best served with on this. 7 also, really good on 7. And it is developed by Dan Ritchie. And see it at thebest3d.com. Hold on, let me go on the screen and grab this here. Oh, I thought I should be able to. First, there you go. There you go. So, in answer to the question what software this is called Project Dog Waffle. There are several versions or editions of it. This one that I'm showing is sort of top of the line, PD Howler, and it includes animation capabilities. The slightly lighter edition is PD Artist, which will do very similar work, allow you to do renderings with GPU-based 3D landscapes, that sort of things, particle brushes as well, but it won't do animation. So it will do a little bit of animation in the brush. You can use animated brushes, paint over it, but it will paint over on the scene. So, back to this displacement business. We had one image here in the main image, and another image here, and a couple of ways to displace it. Displace it. You see that can create some interesting patterns for marble effects, but there are many other things too. We'll explore if you would. But there's another question. There's 3D texturing as well. That's right. Yeah. So that is kind of a very lax or loose way to describe it. There's a lot of different things that it does. Some of it involves 3D. In fact, let me jump into one right now. I'm going to take this image, this pattern as an elevation map, or perhaps one that's, well, let's do that. So I'm going to go to Transform 3D Designer. There's really two to look at when it comes to 3D landscape. From this is an elevation map. Let's see what we can do with that. One is the 3D Designer. And the 3D Designer is really there to help you design the landscape. With a bit more features like something like erosion or sediment deposits based on. So I'm going to set this up, add the lighting a little bit so it's see that's with some shadows, light from the side. Like this, perhaps a little bit more. There's two light sources. Remember, go sort of. There you go. All right, so one thing that we often want to do here is to add a little bit more realism to that landscape, to that rock, to the terrain, to these mountains by adding some erosion. And the 3D Designer is one place where we can do that. There's another place under the filters with the stylized filter. And I'm going to go simply apply some erosion. A couple of number crunching seconds after that, you'll see some erosion, and you can adjust the intensity of that. So you can say, okay, like we have a lot of that carving out of these gullies or the creeks. You can fill a little bit of it. Move this up a little bit. And there's another thing that's sediments. We work on the grayscale elevation map to make it look like all that eroded material is being deposited in the valleys. That's revealing carving out of the eroded parts. And then also another thing that can be very useful is creating a texture, and that's sort of in continuation to what Steve mentioned. You can add 3 levels of basic coloration. There's some snows at the top, more white. And that one is looking at the slope and the elevation. And so based on the elevation, you can sort of put some snow caps on top. But there's also looking at the slope to decide whether it will even stick to walls that are steep. Then there is also grass, or it doesn't have to be green. It's sort of a cloud, color, sand, and get it more private looking. And so this is an area where you'll quite easily experiment with different types of landscape appearance with the detailed erosion. Perhaps, in fact, let me start from a slightly different elevation map. If I start with something like a gradient, there's a tool here on the toolbar that's has a bunch of gradients, including some next layers, but just something simple like a linear gradient. And then I'll pick a gradient from, let's choose this gray one. So I'm going to go from something like this there. And what that allows you to do is create sort of a channel of gray transition, going from black on one end to white on the other. And when you use that filter that we had earlier with the plasma nodes, but this time we use it in a different mode, not in an opaque mode where it places the fire, but in something like a difference, you start seeing some interesting side effects of that, which is perhaps a canyon or a river going through that town. So that's something that you can control to some extent. And then perhaps add to that another rendering of the same, do another render of the plasma noise. And this time, the difference mode, we might use complement. Well, I mean, sometimes you'll do that, but then you will interactively undo what you just did, so you can go back to what you did before and then perhaps do a mini grab in between. Adjust that so you have just a little bit of the doing there. What I'll do perhaps also is to use the plasma noise with this mode here, less than. What that one is really nice for is some of these bridges. Let me zoom into that so you can see that better. See how there's some areas that look like higher elevation bridges. They're slightly wider. So that sort of thing looks really great for space backgrounds. I forget the river we have here, unless you turn that really bright and it's light. But it's something that you can use quite easily to create some nebula or some fused nebula backgrounds, starry skies. Let me store this image temporarily here. I'm going to store this image. We have a quick snapshot of it. Because I wanted to show what I meant with regard to space backgrounds. There is a filter that renders starfields. And the way it does is it combines a few of these stars and changes the size of the stars or the function of them, the colors as well. But in addition to the stars, it also produces a little bit of a background, fluffy or diffused bluish background. And of course, it's very subtle here. You can adjust that a little bit, maybe with the curves for picture. And that's the type of thing that you can do with that same filter and the plasma noise in a mode where you combine it with the less than. Sometimes they will create. In fact, let me do this. Let me start with the blue. I'm going to get that point across. I'm going to go render it in default or big mode. It's a little bit smaller like this. Then do another one just on top of it. Plasma noise. And go to less than 1. Now we're not done. We can just click this or try a few times and get something like this one here. This bridge looks interesting. There's another one here. Yeah, that sort of scenario looks really interesting in a space. There's a couple of other modes. There's a hue saturation value mode. And now you may not want all of these colors. You can perhaps turn it into a bit more of a grayscale, but focus on one color or the other a little bit. And then you got something that looks quite nice for space background. Let me store this image for now, and maybe we'll get back to it later. This one here, that's the one that I stored earlier. Store that back in, and that's where our river is. And I wanted to finish that also, to show how that's rendered when you go into the 3D designer, or in fact further into the Polyway renderer. That's the one that runs on the GPU. Let me make this screen is a little bit smaller here. For this. Oh. And run it on the GPU. So one thing you notice is that there's a water plane. I'm going to temporarily turn that off. Right, and then one thing you notice next is that we didn't make this terrain seamless. Right? So that's something we can certainly take care of. So something like the image, make it seamless. Maybe we'll just use it. And then let's store that. We might need access to that image on the and transform. So now we should have a slightly better rendering without that scene. But it's still dark in some areas because the only light that's currently hitting it left is the sunlight, and parts that are not receiving any sunlight directly. The thing we can do is select the sky, such as this one, and enable global illumination, so that we also do get some light from the sky on top of this. That light, that image can be anything you load if you load a custom brush. It can even be an animated custom brush. But there's a couple of presets. And maybe I'll pick this one. Alright, so here is starting point for landscape rendering, obviously, but I'll just log a little bit. I might want to move the sun back further too. Perhaps bring it up higher, but also make it bigger. Let's make it at 100. And what else? What else do we need on our terrain? Perhaps make it a little bit steeper, so there's the scaling and positioning of the terrain. That terrain, scale it sideways, scale it vertically. Let's increase the brightness of our global. And now, okay, let's go enable that water again. So now, as we move the terrain against the water, you can see you can have just a small lake going through that, or you're going to have a landscape with islands. So that's something new, by the way, in version 11, like the water plane. The GPU-based copyright is something we've had in version 9 and 10. In version 11, we added the water plane, and then also made it a bit more realistic. If you look at the retraction option, you do that. You can start seeing into the water, and there's a couple of things that help make it even more realistic. This is a quick preview render. Let's do a higher quality. This one will go through several passes, and I'm not on a very fast system here. This is actually a very old 7 or 8-year-old laptop, the mobile edition of the i7, second or third generation. The graphic card, as you can see here at the top, is the GeForce GTX 560, so by far not the fastest these days. I think I have about 60 or 70 GPU cores, computer cores. You will be easily 10 times faster than that nowadays, because you're probably going into the 600-700 cores, and easily perhaps in 2,000 or 3,000. If you have a 1070 or 1080, you're going to be into the 2,000, 3,000. So that can give you an idea of how fast that can be. In fact, while I'm operating here, I'm going to turn off the anti-aliasing. And that way I have just one rendering pass while I'm exploring. What I want to do is explore a little bit the water to see what happens if you change some of the rendering of the water. There's a couple of parameters in this world tab up here at top. Bottom we see water and fog extras. So one of them is the fog. Let's do that one first. That one's sort of a cloud fog. It adds a little bit of fog that seems to be hovering over the ground, over the water level actually. Let's turn this one off for now and see a few other things. So there's attenuation. This is based on the depth of the landscape under the water. Right? How deep does the water go? Right? If you don't have any attenuation, then the water will be relatively clear and you can see the landscape under the water. But there's still also a scattering. Turn that off, so it's fully transparent. Now there's still some refraction going, distortion due to the waves, and you can adjust on the waves, the height of the waves. That can also have a nice effect on how much of that scattering is happening, the reflection that you see on the landscape. Go, for instance, a little bit closer to this top. this. And zoom in there. So now you see quite a bit of scattering there. And whereas if you take the wave height to very small, 0.2, 0.1, something like that, there will be less of that, much cleaner. And there's a few other options. There are breakers for the waves. Choose a different algorithm, current noise. There's also noise frequency, so you can do a little bit of noise on that. More. This one is probably going to be very different. And with that, speed, there's a speed at which the waves move, and that of course comes when you actually do an animation with that. Let me do that. Let me cancel out of that. Little animation with this. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. Sample it to let's make it half the size. Okay, so I'm going to store this image, and the backside I think was sampled to not. Let's just generate a texture map for that, stylize. You notice there's this erosion option I mentioned earlier. So under the filter, stylize filter, you have a few tools, and there's a erosion filter. Let's just do that just so we see what the erosion map looks like. Right, so that's something that can be useful if you want to add more erosion. So let's take a snapshot of that as well. Back to this, and for instance, if you want to apply that erosion, simply combine it in a subtracted map. Subtract those white gullies from the elevation map. Right? That's a really strong erosion, maybe a little bit too strong. Use this a little bit. Also, you have some types of erosions that take longer over millions of years, and it's not a narrow carved gully or creek like these. It's fairly narrow. So what you might want to do is actually take a snapshot of that. You might take this one and blur it, right? Lighten it, or use the night diffusion on photographic, so that it's blurring the extent on each of these paths. It's blurring to the outside darker region, and it's making that erosion a little bit more widespread. And then you can do that 2-3 times. So when you subtract that from the original elevation map, or this one here already modified, if you subtract that, you see that it's doing a reduction in the brightness to a much wider region, perhaps creating the impression of valleys that are much wider than that carbon. So yeah, I see one of the questions, comments on TerraGen is still around. That's true. There's a lot of things you can do with programs that are even more focused on that, right? I mean, this is one of the things we do in Howler. It's not the total and only thing we do. You'll see programs like Udisplay that's excellent also at creating landscapes. TerraGen. Heck, even in programs, a 3D program like Howler, you see some interesting landscape capabilities. And one way to use it actually is to perhaps start with this. If you become a little bit more familiar with that, to find some of the tools a bit more interesting to start with. Then take that elevation map into Howler or into Lightwave, to even Photoshop. You can load an elevation map and turn it into a 3D menu. And your ways to operate in mixed environments. What we do with that, though, if you don't have those other extra tools, what you can certainly do is say that, go back to WA, and let's do it with the anti-aliasing. Since it's a smaller image, it's going to take a little bit less time to render this time. And let me turn the camera to the left so you can see a bit more of that difference. And also make the angle of the camera a little bit more wide angle. With anti-aliasing. I'll do a little bit more, let's say 12 levels of anti-aliasing. These are the anti-aliasing steps you see in the lower right. There's also the level of detail that you want to see during the ray tracing, so that's the ray step. And if you go with higher number, it will be less detailed. Let's say you go, something like this, and then look at the details here, and with that. And then let's do another one with 0.2. And you'll start seeing more fine details of the erosion, for instance. Now, we didn't put many details yet on the landscape. We had bump maps for that. Let me zoom into that. And somewhere around here. So let's do a little bit on the terrain. There's some bump maps here. Rocky one, for example. Let's go render that. Of course, this is pretty much in the shaded area. It's not going to reveal much of the bumpiness if we don't have some light. Let me go and rotate a little bit more to the side. Yeah, something like this. And then we can increase the value if you want it a bit more exaggerated. That frequency or the wavelength. This is a volumetric bump map. You can see a little bit of subtle details added. Please zoom on to that. In fact, let me also lower the scaling on it so it's more on the hand. And bring it out of the water. There you go. Goes up the just a little bit. Okay, so now you start seeing some of these fine details due to the bump maps. These those little rocky changes all over. If you don't have that, you have just no bump map. It's fairly plain, flat, and very interesting looking. So if you need that extra, add some fractal noise, add some pitted appearance. That will look better if it's supposed to be some sort of a metal post or a concrete block or something where some parts have been jerked out, or actually it looks pretty nice also when you have an icy landscape with snow and ice and some parts of it disrupted, melted away. One of my favorites, Mudbank is pretty good if you need something that's more like washed out. This one here, the riverbed, is probably my favorite. It has a good combination of a number of things. Showing that before. And look towards where the water is also showing. And render that with the anti-aliasing. So you can see there is a lot of little details showing on the terrain on the right side. And if you add a little bit higher, bigger dimensions, will change it. Bring it lower, will make it, you can see it's the reverse of the stuff. So let's look at the water though. I'm quite done with the water. We had the water without attenuation. That's why we can see into the water. Let's bring it back to, I think the default was 1.2. Let's make it a little bit higher, 1.8. So it's starting to take a bit of a bluish tint, a bit darker. If we really over-exaggerate this, 6. That. We don't have a lot of water there. So let's see if I go 22. Let's pick a number and see how it's getting pretty dark. The red and the green get absorbed first, and the red first, then gradually the green. Now, another thing that happens with water is that you can't see through it all the time because the light, well, first of all, it's being attenuated, there's absorption, but also scattering. So with that, with the scattering, and you can change the color, that's one thing, more like brownish color, and that would be appropriate storm. I want to render that with a little bit more murkiness, or also a higher value than that. Perhaps less on the edge. So this is very shallow water, so I'm actually exaggerating the numbers a bit just to get the effect. Go to an area which is a little bit dark. We'll show that a bit. Yeah, something like that. Let's try one of those blue. Blue. All right. Well, I think I'm going to go and answer another question here. We have plenty of other things to show. I want to actually show an example and then get right into that. I've been tinkering with this and rather than just letting you imagine it, I'll show you some examples. Here's an example. I think this one is animation, since one of the questions is what does the animation do? Let's have a look at that. Alright, so this one is actually a composition of multiple pieces, and we can talk about animation by looking at how that was done. The background obviously is one of the landscapes generally created with that erosion, sediments, and the rendering options of copyright. So that one's done as the first part, just in the background. The water is animated, and then we wanted to add the airplane. Now the airplane is a different piece. That's a 3D object created in a different program and then rendered as a single static image into something like a PNG or a TIFF with the alpha channel for transparency around the airplane. Right? But then we also wanted to show the reflection of it and make it look like it's really reflecting on those moving waves. So we need to find a way to coordinate that reflected image of the airplane and not just have it static like the one above the waterline. The one above the waterline is not being distorted. The one below, though, as a reflection, is distorted by the waves. And so we learn a lot about animation and checking how to do that. Let me go and start with a new image. And perhaps we'll do something like size 800 by 600 and turn this into an animation. There's not much here. This is just a single static image. But when you animate, you create a placeholder, if you will, for a certain number of frames. And let's say I want a very short animation of just 30 frames. And now I do have my frames. They're all identical initially, because there's many different things you could animate. One is you are going to draw something yourself. Maybe you'll take one of those brushes, maybe a simple brush, size, and draw sort of a ground, and then switch to a different color and want that to be a ground on which some animated, maybe a bouncing ball will draw that. So doing an animation frame by frame is what we're talking about here, and you could draw all here, and next frame, oh wait, we didn't do that yet, right? So we need to have the ground floor on all of these frames. So what I'll do is I'll simply create the animation with that ground, that line at the bottom. That way each of the frames becomes a copy of that code. right? And if this is an animation that I like to work on again and again, I might want to take a snapshot, just very much the same as I had some snapshots of the images here that were from elevation maps or texture maps. All these snapshots in memory, but when it comes to animations, I don't want to waste too much memory for that. So I'll typically go and store the animation. If it's short enough, and then eventually I'll put it in memory. That'll be fast. If you have an SSD drive, it's not much slower if you just put it on disk. And even this one, I'm not on an SSD drive, but for a short animation like this, it's definitely to have a stored copy on disk and to basically have a snapshot to get back to quite easily. Right? Because if you mess this up, a number of things here and on different frames, and you say, oh, how do I undo all that? It'll take a while. Well, it's just click here and that restores the whole animation to what we stored in this snapshot. That's the idea about doing snapshots for the current image. You can snapshot the current selection mask. Right? If you do something like oval selection here, and I can see that it's a selection because of the marching ants. See that quite nicely. You can see selection also by overlay. The purple appearance is really something I like to use. Give it that pink combination, and then that way you don't even need the marching ants necessarily. They take a while to render. The marching ants animation is something that if you have a very sophisticated, very highly detailed marching ants all over the place, it's going to slow you down a little. So I like to disable that, but certainly keep the overlay enabled so you don't have crisp that transition is on the selection. If I want to blur that, go to the selection menu. You have tools such as the box filter selection. You can even show the alpha as a grayscale map. That way you can see how soft or how sharp that transition is along the edges. Another way to adjust that is with the Gaussian. So let's say you have a mask of some sort that you want to keep. You can store that as well. There it is. There's a stored copy of that, and you make changes and you don't write them. Say you apply the Gaussian blur to that, and you do some stuff with it, but later you said, no, I actually want to go back to the sharp, crisp edge. Or you could, in fact, combine them. You could subtract this one from that one, or from this one that's stored, you can subtract it from the other ones. That's something like maybe the solar eclipse kind of thing. So a lot of things you can do when you have stored content, stored alpha, stored images, stored animations. So I'm going to go and clear the animation, clear the selection, restore this animation, which has the ground floor, and just take a look at creating a very simple animation by hand. Like this is frame by frame. And it might be something like just a simple bouncing ball. So I'm going to use something like a large ball that's coming in here. That's the first frame. Next frame. Down gradually. Now, of course, it'd be nice to tell where was I prior frame. It's sort of an onion skin look. There it is. And there you go. And you can adjust to the neighbor and see how much of that neighbor you see. Sort of a weight factor. See the prior. Even add a redshift so that you can, if you go to a certain number of frames, this. As you go through that, you can see there's a blue shift in the front and a red shift below the show frames behind. So that's an interesting thing if you're into step frame animation. If you're drawing animations frame by frame, you have sort of an onion skin, height table. So we have a quick animation basically done by frame. Let's do this thing. In fact, maybe we want to have it bounce off here, flat against the wall on the right side. rotates, it bounces off here, and then it starts to come down again. But this is a very quick downpour, obviously. I'm not making it look like a very rigid, solid ball, but maybe we want to exaggerate there how much of the squeezing it gets when it hits the ground. So we can scrub through that. And there's a couple of things you can do with regard to animations. Actually, there's a micro video. See that also here from the animation menu. Frames. A whole bunch of options on the frames. So for instance, if you wanted to duplicate this, if you have a sequence from here to here and then you want to replicate it, and select that. Set a hit marker right here, and then perhaps this one here will be your out marker. We have a selection here, you can see it highlighted. Copy that. Copy that block, then go to the end here and insert all of it. There's some basic animation capabilities, frame by frame animation, but it goes quite a bit further too. Let's take a look at that terrain we had. So here we have just an animation quickly created, frame by frame. What I'd like to do really is animate my landscapes. 3D animation through the landscape as I'm flying through. So let's go and create that initial rendered plasma noise in the place mode and using that tutorial. Why do we still? Oh, we still have the area here. Let me clear the animation. Clear it and get rid of this here. Oh, it's still there. Why did I have it? Here's Alright, let's go render that. That's the noise. That's a little bit smaller, big. Okay, so I want to create an animation going through that. Right? In fact, let's also carve out a little bit of additional data. Let's go and what did we see? Plasma noise in less than mode. There you go. We get those nice little bright ridges. That can look really interesting for a landscape, but mostly underwater. Some of them not quite eroded yet, not like coral reefs, that sort of thing. Let's make it seamless. Yes, there it is. And let's add some erosion to it. So for that we can either calculate the erosion and then subtract it, or we can take it into the, what do we call it, the 3D designer. I'm going to go with the stylized approach and simply do the erosion. Store that. Go back to the stored animation or stored image and subtract. Subtract it. Yeah. Say that's nice, but it's too intense, so I don't want to go that low. Just a little bit. Alright, store that. Stage. Moment reached. Let's turn this into an animation. So if we want to slide through that terrain, I mean, we can already compare what the 3D rendering from that will look like. Go to copyright again. And rendering now. Landscape. This one doesn't have the water. I think the water would be lower. Move the terrain downwards, eventually you might see water. There it is. Let's say we want one without water. Let's say we do some desert landscape. You can actually turn the water off. Yeah, that's good for it. Okay. By the way, a little trick too, if you are on a slow system like myself here, if you want to go a little bit faster, one thing that helps is to turn the shadows off. Obviously, turn the anti-aliasing off. Right? You don't want to go through 12 anti-aliasing steps every time you move the mouse slowly. But another thing you can also do is turn the shadows off. So turn the anti-aliasing off, shadows, and so with that you move through that a little bit faster. And now what you'd like to do is simply do a little fly through or terrain and fly over or sweep the camera from left to right. And later we can decide if we want to add the water with that. In fact, if the water was in there with the show, currently it's still below the terrain, so let's move the terrain down a little bit so we have a chance of that to revive the water with it. Yes. Perhaps I'm going to have steeper. There's another thing you notice, by the way, if I render that with the anti-aliasing. It's also doing a bit of darkening along the waterline. And so that's another little fine detail of the renderer. When we have the water close to the terrain, it's darkening it so that it makes it look like it's wet. Right? So it's like a beach wet look, or the rocky just along the coastline. Makes it a little bit dark. It's one little detail that adds to it. Alright, so but for now we'll do without the water. And without anti-aliasing, with the shadows. Right, and how do we turn this into an animation? Well, we need a placeholder for the animation. And we go back to that original grayscale with that's the animation. We don't have a color map yet for the texture. Might want to do that too. You can do that later though. That one's not going to need the animation. We'll do the animation on the main image. So we go to animation create and say this time we'll do 90. Let's say we need a clip that's 3 seconds long or 30 frames per second. 90 frames. And we are essentially ready to go back to the copyright GPU version. And how do we now make it some sort of an animation? Let's say we want to do a sweep from left to right. Or we want to move tilt like that. So there's a bunch of different things. Tilting it sideways, moving it sideways, moving the camera over the terrain, maybe getting to or dive into crash into the landscape. All sorts of different animations you might want to do here. And so the way to do it is you have this animation timeline. Let's go to preview. Scrub through that a little bit faster. Fast preview will allow you to use it pretty much in time. So what you do is you set a keyframe and then change the parameters and then change to another keyframe. Let's say at the beginning you want to be here, perhaps a little bit more horizontal. Change the angle there and keyframe that. Right? And then at the end of the animation, you like to look a little bit more to the right. So you do a panoramics. Okay, so now you have essentially a transition that it scrubs through or it interpolates from left to right. One keyframe and put other keyframes. You could, for instance, in the middle of this, might say you want to dip down a little bit, like this, and perhaps even tilt your camera a little bit like that. And keyframe that. So now you have a keyframe at the beginning. And you can advance to the next keyframe right here, move to the next keyframe. Starts in the middle. Move to the next one, you're back to the last one. Okay, so let's go high quality render. And we're ready to render that animation. You have next to the render option and the animate option. And there's a couple of presets, or you just leave it with the current settings if you do a lot of tweaks away from the preset. And render that. So now it's doing what? Six anti-aliasing steps for each frame. The animation, you see it's going through. I think the first frame is rendered twice. I'm not sure why. Might be for some internal initialization. But then it's going through one frame at a time always. And again, this is a very quick render, only 6 anti-aliasing steps. Probably you'll need to go to about 20 or 30 to the final render. It's not uncommon that I go to over to triple digits to 100 or 150 rendering passes. That's when I want to really just push it to the max. The problem is that I'm in a slow system, so I will stay away from that. With your graphic cards that are nowadays to the hundreds or a couple of thousand, of course,
Hey, Phil.
Yeah.
We've got a request for lava.
Lava.
They're saying lava would be great on this one. Is that possible?
Yeah, there is a tool. There's a filter called lava. Whether it looks like the lava you're looking for, it's probably. Let's see. Is the question about lava on this particular terrain, or just general as a texture that? Like
yes. No. On this particular terrain is what I'm thinking. Or do something fresh if you feel it might work better.
Yeah, well, I don't know that we can map the lava to that terrain easily in the render itself. Maybe a composition of two different things. But let's see. What would I do for lava? Well, let's just finish the animation. Didn't quite render everything. Get you an idea. So let's talk about lava. There are things I haven't worked a lot with that, but let's see what there is. A cold lava filter, and so that could be a starting point. Let me see. Well, how would I make this look like lava that's moving in a particular direction and also, changing shapes as it's moving from left to right, and something like that. So I might say perhaps okay, we keep this, and then let me think. Let's go create an animation from that. Let's keep 30 seconds. Make it seamless. That might be useful if we do transforms, right? Because I'm about to do something like this here. Filter, I might say, let's go shift it. I might want to shift it sideways, but I don't want that ugly transition or edge there, so I want to make it seamless before I start shifting. So let's go to image, seamless. And again, this is just a grayscale. You might turn that into a matte color, like reddish, glowing. A couple of different things to do. In fact, even just inverting it, let's do that. We still are of an animation. Let's go and see that working just one image. If I invert this, invert the image, not so much. Let's map the color to that. I mean, we could certainly just colorize it, just color it reddish. Use the green and perhaps a little bit of additive. That's not giving us the glow we want to get, but it's a start. Adjust the contrast here. Mostly dark. That. Let's see. What else might make maybe a little bit of light. Where's stylize light? There you go. Interesting texturing or lighting effects. Add that. These to make it look a bit more soft or ardent lava. Alright, something like this perhaps. Keep the fine details. Right, so we have something like this that we'd like to move in some sort of a channel or just move to the left and right, but have it also displaced as it's moving to make it look like it's not just one block. So let's take that and let's see what happens if we move it in the first place. So may need, since we did a few more things, we may need to have a bit of bucketing. So remove that. And so let's say we do the filter. Was it transform? So there's a shift that will allow us to move it sideways. There's a transform that may do a few other things too. And in fact, we want to tile it and go to scale it, that sort of thing. So if you want to turn this into an animation, obviously we need to create an animation container. Go to animation menu and create. And something like this. Now all frames are identical. All we gotta do, go to the timeline and select the transform filter. One, two, three on this sidebar, scroll bar, please. There. Enable tiling. Or maybe actually scale in a little bit. So we have some margin to work with. We don't even need time. Especially if yeah. So at the beginning of the animation, timeline, the first frame, position around here. Set a keyframe of the animation. Right here. A linear transition. Apply that. Sure, you have to save under enable. That will take each frame before it gets modified, put it on the hard drive so it can easily undo it, store it to the original. If you apply that, you now have a first animation of this lava. It's not changing shapes though. It's not being. It doesn't look liquid. It looks like it's just a static block. We're looking at maybe something like leather lighting, but it doesn't look like it's liquid lava, fluid content. So one way, how could we do that? How could we make it look a little bit more realistic in that sense? Perhaps one thing we can do is displace it. Displacement map. That could be done before or after we apply all this fancy lighting. Since we already did apply the lighting, that's that option. But there could also be a benefit in first doing the displacement, then add the lighting. Sure. So first of all, I'm going to store this animation. It's definitely a precious step in the page. I would definitely recommend you save that. I don't want to save it to, at least its internal format, the EWA, Grop language. It's a frame sequence, compressed, but it's quick to reload. There's also an image sequence. Save it as a Farga. That's our recommended fast export. GA, Farga format. On the other screen. Where that one? Okay, and that is strange. It seems to be locked in. I'm not seeing on my screen or on the other screen. Hold on, let me see if it's. Oh, I was able to escape that. Alright, so what I'll do is I did that already, store the animation, and now I'd like to apply some displacement. Right, so what's the displacement? We've seen that very early in today's session. We can go to the swap image and load another image in there. In fact, it could even be the same image. Let's go and create that rendered plasma noise again. Or, let's see, there's another one, of course. Render, bumpy toys. The cold lava itself could be used here too. Right? Maybe a slightly different scale. And then go back to the main image sequence and use this grayscale swap image as a displacement. Now, if I just test it here with the displace by swap, for instance, cool displays, but that one's way too much. Like that. Now we can't in a single image really tell what it's doing, so we'll either apply it through the animation or even move the intensity across the timeline. But even that, instead of applying it to just one image, the current frame, you can apply it to the entire animation sequence. Oops, and that didn't right. Alright, so I've been doing this demo. We go back, start it every once in a while. Yeah. Go back into this. Much over. And there's also the animation that might restore from file, but it's probably fast enough to just create it. Are they seamless? And animated the timeline. See, transforming it. Yeah. Roughly from here, first frame, and to other side, to the last one. Okay, so apply that. Store the animation. So now what I'd like to do is, again, add a displacement. Now this time I'm actually going to take a shortcut. Just take this image, the first one we had in the animation sequence, store that image, and load it into the swap. So I'll take a look at the swap. It's still there because it was stored from the load. But I'm going to use this one just to see another way to do it. So the image is now both in the main frame that I'm looking at in the main image, and also in the swap. You can use it to displace. You can use the swap image to displace the other image. I'm going to use the timeline to do it this time. And that would be under the displace category. Yeah, displace by swap. There's one like this. And as we're scrubbing through it, it's applying that same image from the swap. It's using the image from the swap to apply a displacement. It's very subtle. But you can easily add a bit of liveliness to it. Let's go and undo and use a different displace, maybe the full displace. In fact, one thing you could do is have the intensity of it change over time, along the timeline. Right? So you could have very little of it first, if you want to show the lava gradually moving, and then a little bit. So you see initially very little displacement, and then just more as it's going through. It's a bit strong here, probably not exactly what you were hoping. Yeah, experimenting with this will probably get you perfect seeking. This looks a little bit more like more than that. And maybe it's because we did actually apply that lighting to it first. It might be better to do the lighting afterwards. So yeah, good comment there. Could I have done this in Lightwave faster? No, not me, because I don't know Lightwave. You can certainly do similar effects in many other programs, and once you know your tool, once you understand the steps to do this, you can certainly do that in other ways too. I want to see what I can do here creating this in Howler. But one thing that I wanted to get to also is what happens if you actually do the lighting afterwards. Effect of the lighting a little bit later. So certainly something like this you could in fact take light to the ray tracing one place where you'll see some light. That's more of a changing of the elevation map over time, though, right? So let's say I get rid of the water. Say what else? Yeah, maybe not scaled up that much. Is the other side. Say we want to bit of global illumination from a more reddish sky, like this. There. So how do we make that move? Well, the animation sequence is already there. That's the height map, though. That's the elevation map. Can we use that as the basis for the terrain view? Yes, you can. You can do that right here. There's an option in the lower right, near the lower right, called animate each frame. So now, before we can do an animation, we need to set a keyframe. We need to set 2 keyframes. So even if we don't move the camera, even if we stay exactly in place, so we actually focus on what's happening to the terrain itself, you can now indicate that you want to see the animation based on every frame being animated. And perhaps we go into a slightly better quality. Let's perhaps move the sun a little bit. Although it is different elevation for the end frame. Keyframe there. Let's go right back. Good, animate each frame. The first frame has already rendered. Has already rendered in there. But there you go. Now you see the animation not due to camera movement or terrain shifting, but the elevation map itself changing. If that one is done properly with a nice slow effect on the elevation map itself, you'll see that movement that you're looking for. Yeah, so you caught me off guard here with regard to your question on lava. I've not done lava much, so I wouldn't know what the best approach is to create the effect you're looking for. It's a possibility you might get to something similar to sand dunes moving, or perhaps a bit more liquid looking. I think long ago I did actually lava animation. Howler PD Pro 3 or 4. It was long ago though. I don't remember exactly how it did. It was before.
So I've got a question, Phil. All right, so yeah. I'm looking at the basic, what you consider your basic lava effect, and I think the thing that affects lava is also the luminosity, the brightness in various areas, to give it a glow. Are you able to do that in Dog Waffle? Like animate the luminance?
So you would say starting from
maybe using
this one here, change the. Well, this one's a grayscale, so we would certainly need some sort of.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like illuminating the red areas, making it brighter or darker as you over the animation of time.
Oh yeah. Okay, not sure if that's going to give you an effect, but yeah, there are a number of filters where you can change over time.
Yeah.
How much of a color you can, like, or how much of the values. Yeah. So, for instance, saturation, hue saturation values. Yeah, so let's say you wanted to have a change in the view. Yeah? But it's applying it over the entire image. You might want to have a selection mask that also changes across the background.
Right.
That's also
maybe the current texture can be the mask, so that it
yep.
Yeah, I mean, interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's say we could do this. We could change hue, saturation, saturate. So we want to something like this. And so over time it will change a little bit there. If we apply this image, if instead you want to apply it only in particular areas, you could do that. You could, let's say if we have this current selection, that's the animation stored aside. You can use that as the selection mask. Mark it as an animated selection. And as you scroll through that, you see if you enable the marching ants, some areas here of the marching ants. You might need to adjust the contrast a little bit, more or less. But that will already help. Maybe what I'll do is I'll actually turn this into a grayscale. It will be a little bit easier to control that way. Let's do the grayscale across the animation. Expand the dynamic range so we go from black to white on some of these pieces. That way, and we can further adjust the value like that. Across the animation. Should have done that at the mask. But we already have now at this time a mask that can be used to control where changes in the view are. Right, so let's go store this animation. That will be our selection mask. And flag it to use it as a selection mask. Load the original animation back. So we have the colors. And we are looking through the selection mask to apply the filter. And in fact, let's do that very extreme, right? We go to extreme changes in the hues. What's happening? And it's a bit messy as it's going through it. Let's go undo this so it's no longer applying selection mask on that stored animation. So yeah. It does some of that effect. I'm not sure exactly what effect you're looking for, Steve, but it's definitely something you can work with if you isolate the different different portions there, the selection mask that you want to control.
Right. You might want to put. We might want to add like an animated mask to the light to the hue and adjustment itself, and then so that it
right.
varies intensity in localized areas.
Yep. Well, I mean, this is actually an animated mask. Right now, you can see this stored copy that I have in grayscale is animated. It just happens to be in sync with the flow of the lava itself, which is typically what you want. But then you may also have some variations. You may want to add some changes to that flow, the general flow going from left to right. But then there's some areas where you want it to, like, if it's exploding or it's widening, and then getting dark, cooling.
Right.
So that's a variation you can apply across that. Absolutely. And there's one way to do that, by the way, is with a filter called the snowfall filter. So it drops blobs across the scene, and then you can have it move, change, create maybe a turbulent appearance. So that would be something like snowfall filter.
So Phil,
yes.
Can we? You want to take a 15-minute break?
Yep, sounds good.
All right. So let me. All right. Let me. I'm gonna find our 15-minute break icon here, or video. All right. So we're gonna take a 15-minute break. Let me find my little. There we go. 15-minute timer. Yay. All right. Let's bring this on over. And we're gonna just bring that down. Okay, all right, everybody. I guess it doesn't want to do that. I want to bring the whole screen over. Great, fine, do it that way. All right, so we're gonna take about a 15-minute break, go. We're gonna just kind of stand up, take a break. Let me kind of bring my little screen on here so you can see me talking while I am chatting with you. Video. All right, and let's get Phil down. All right, there we go. Hey everybody. All right, so 15-minute break. We'll come back. Keep your eye on the timer, and we're going to start it now. And then this is going to be a bathroom break time, or get something to eat, stretch your legs, step away from the computer for a little bit. We'll come back and we'll continue our presentation. Pretty cool stuff, huh? This is Dog Waffles is very interesting. It was created by Dan Ritchie. I was really hoping he can be here today, and I'm going to reach out to him again during the break time and see if we can get him on board. If not, no big deal. Phil is the guy who does all his presentations, and he's the guy to buy it. And Phil, you may want to talk about the price of this after we come back from break, that and maybe find a web page for people to go buy. It's really inexpensive, guys. It's a pretty killer little program for doing some digital painting that you can apply to any of your 3D assets and or landscapes. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's take a little bit of a break. We'll come back and we'll have more fun. Okay. All right. See you in a little bit.